Well, hi and welcome back to Dad's Shed. And you'll notice an unusual angle here. The project I put myself into a week or so back because I've had very little time in here. But the problem I have with my shed is there isn't any room in it. Lathes, milling machines all take up a fair bit of space. Although as a shed at 30 foot long and just over 10 foot wide, 30 square meters floor area, it's huge until you start putting all the kit in. And then when you add in the tripod, things become pretty close to a nightmare. So I watched another YouTube channel a few times, and I would really recommend it. It's one called Inheritance Machining, and a guy on there called Brandon over in our friends in the US of A, and he had a similar problem, although he does seem to have about 4 times as much space as I have. And that was, he kept tripping over the cameras and not able to get the angles he really wanted without putting tripods in really silly places. And he came up with a brilliant idea, which is running a track system. Now, I've worked in the media industry and I'm used to tracks and I'm used to camera tracks and all sorts of things. But I couldn't think of a way of doing it in the shed. But what he did triggered a thought, and I've adapted what he did to suit my particular environment. The problem I have that he didn't is I have a slightly pitched roof and the ceiling follows it by 4 inches. So the ceiling has got a 1 in 20 drop from one side to the other. So putting a double track across and having a nice stable arm wasn't going to work. But I've played around with this and I've come up with an alternative design. Now, as you can see here, I've got a second camera set up, which is now pointing down here, and it's on an arm. I have other arms in here which I can clamp to things, but they are very, very lightweight. I've currently got my main camera set up on a tripod, which it will soon no longer need, because I'll be able to put it from the ceiling. I've got one arm system in here now. I will build a second because I could have one down here and one up there and give me 2 different angles. I much prefer having a variety of angles, so if I'm doing some turning I can come in close up down onto the work. So that's what I've done. I did record quite a lot of this, and my iPad that I recorded on has suddenly had a fit and decided I can't see any of it. Well, I can see it on the iPad, but I can't do anything with it on there. So this is going to be a quick and dirty overview of the track system that I've put in the shed. I hope you find it interesting. So let's have a quick look at this gantry arm. It runs in a unit strut track, which is a U-shaped standard fitting. Usually takes cables. It's a cable duct. So I've milled down a piece of steel, drilled it, put 2 axles through, and I have ball bearings running on the edge of those. It's been sized so that it just fits with a little bit of rock sideways. Coming down from there, there's another piece of steel, and it's 22.5 by inch, basically inch by 7/8. And that inch by 7/8 is drilled and bored through at 12mm. It's drilled and tapped 4mm, and there's a piece that's been made that goes in there, and I'll get that out in a second. We'll just track down the bar a bit more. Got some 8mm studs I've made here. A 6mm piece of studding goes through that takes the top of the spring. That then goes through, and I've drilled some holes for adjustment, but I think that's about right, the right place. I say it's 19mm or 20mm aluminium bar. Sorry, aluminium tube. Each end I've actually put an insert in which is made of Delrin. Drilled through, and drilled through. The end bar again is 4mm, and it's drilled to take 1/4 inch Whitworth. On the inside here, you can see the Delrin insert in the end of the tube. There's also a Delrin washer, 1mm thick, top and bottom. Now this is drilled through at 10mm, and it's got a plastic sleeve which is 21.5mm long, 10mm OD and 6mm internal diameter to take the 6mm studs I've manufactured. So you've got steel on plastic and plastic on aluminium, so it actually does give, although it's done up quite tight, it does give a fairly smooth response. On here, I'm just taking this one out and moving it along. I've got these 6mm studding, which will be taking the load of the spring, and the spring will come down from there and come down and stretch over to that. It doesn't have an awful lot of movement, it doesn't need it, but that should take a bit of the weight off the bearings there and take the weight of the camera on the springs. And it's using a sort of a parallelogram motion, so these are the same length, and it does mean that that stays horizontal all the way through. Turned up a little brass screw to screw the head in on the top here. I can actually use that top and bottom, so with something like the camera phone that I'm using at the moment, I can put that on there and hang it underneath, or I can sit it over the top. Not quite so easy with the main camera because obviously that doesn't like hanging upside down. But that is the basic outline, and we'll have a quick look at, in more detail, at a couple of the elements on it. This currently is just an 8mm screw in the end. It's a machine screw. I had no problem actually using a 13mm socket on that, but I will actually make that into a thumb screw at some point in the near future. Now let's move along very, very rapidly and have a look up there. And there you see the Unistrut track running down the length of the workshop roof. There is another one that's on that side. I can use it for the camera, but I'm actually going to use it for other things to enable me to slide stuff along. I say the big problem you've got is in the workshop there is not a lot of space between the machines, and walking space is at a premium, and I'm getting very, very fed up with tripping over the tripod. So the tripod is now going to be hanging from the ceiling. Okay, this is the far end. I'll just take these springs off. of that one because just get it out of the way. All that is a short another Delrin washer, and this then just comes straight out the top. There's another Delrin washer here, but it's actually been machined with a step in it so that it goes over the top of there and clamps onto the bottom of the rail. So once that's on, that goes on there, and that's it. It's internally threaded 8mm, externally threaded 12mm at the top, and screws into the base of that. So on the mill, I've milled down the block that will take the runners, and I've just tapped an M12 hole in the top using my recent purchase of a spring-loaded tap follower. It works, not brilliant, bit basic, wobbles a little bit, but for the moment that will do the job until I can make something better. So that's that. So that's tapped nice and square, and I've now got to make up the M12 unit that will screw into the top that I can then hang the other bits off of. So all fairly straightforward. Literally just goes on there. You may notice there's a little bit of copper slip although as it's called now, anti-seize compound. I like the idea of anti-seize when it comes to taking things apart, especially. That literally fits there over the 12mm. And that has locked it. There's no real pressure on there at all. That comes out and that unlocks. So the whole thing can go back together again. That goes on there, pulls over, hooks over the end of the stud. This one I'll just do up in a moment, and then I'll put it back up and I'll show you some of the things I can do with it. Okay. As you can probably see, this will swivel around. It's not tightened up at all at the moment. That's tightened it so it won't slide, but it will still move. So I can swivel it around and lock it off in position. Last two bits I need to put on here, it's a lot easier when they're up, is hook those over onto there. And hook that one over and onto there. And then that can move around, up, down, twist it, sideways, all over the place. So with this, I've got a phone on the end at the moment, but it can be that or it can be my main camera, and I can put it wherever I want. And when I get a second one in here, that will enable me to have two camera angles, and I can move this around. And if I want to change where it's aiming, it is actually very, very easy to do so. And at the moment it's quite low down, so it's within reach of my head. But if I do that and do that, I can walk around past the camera without an issue. So that is going to make my life in here and making some videos without having to worry about it an awful lot easier. Well, hi all. I didn't think it was right to not do a little demonstration of the advantage I've now got of having two cameras and one which in a place I would not normally be able to have it. So I've got the normal phone camera on me, and that's just clamped to a convenient spot, and then the closer up camera, which is aiming down here, that is on the new arm. So I've just gone into here with an end mill or a 10mm slot drill to give clearance for the head of an Allen bolt. I'm now going to drill through 3.3mm and then follow that up with a 4.1 part way through, and that will enable me then to tap through 4mm and then a slitting saw across here to slit this in half, and that will then make my clamping nut for the top of my new milling spindle. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit. Not the easiest system to work on here. I could really do with a locking spindle, but I don't have one. So this has to work that way. That can come out. That can come out. That can go in. And I must admit, I do find the ER collet systems very, very useful, because obviously they are neither metric or imperial. Theoretically they're metric, but with a 1mm adjustment they cover a huge range. So I can put imperial cutters or drills in, or metric drills, and that will then enable me to do what I need to do. Right, let's adjust this out. I need to be able to go all the way through with this one, and that's going, should be just about right. Let's take it out a bit further. On my drill I've actually put a vertical scale. I haven't yet got around to doing it on here, but it is something that is going to happen because it is so useful to be able to do that. Let's drop some safety glasses on. Might help if I turn the mill head on. I have gone into this prior to the drill with a small centre drill to make sure I've got a good start point. Well, I'm going to need to adjust that out because that drill is not quite long enough to go all the way through where it's there. Okay, that's slit. I need to do a little bit of cleaning up on the internal threads, but first thing will be I'll just tap that, and it should be relatively easy because I can just drop the tap in, it'll go in through the 4.1mm clearance hole and should drop straight into the 3.3mm hole that's been drilled for tapping. So I'll crack on and do that. I won't show you that, be boring, but this just gives a little demonstration of the advantages I've now got with the overhead camera as against the tripod that would be sitting about there, and I'd have to try and get around it to get up and down the shed. I hope you found this of interest. If you have, don't forget to like and subscribe for other content. This is going to be going on the spindle, and my next job is going to be cutting the straight gears for the top of the spindle drive, and I'll be setting up to do that a bit later. See you soon. Have fun. And cheers from Dad's Shed.